Stop the tape. Right now. Stop it.
Dr. Phil's voice cut through the studio like a blade. In 35 years of television, he had never done this. The cameras kept rolling for a moment, confused crew members looking at each other, until he raised his hand more firmly.
I said stop the recording. Everyone hold.
The studio audience sat frozen. The guest on stage, 43-year-old Michael, looked up with tears streaming down his face, not understanding what was happening. But Dr. Phil knew exactly what he was about to do. And it would change everything. What happened in the next 7 minutes would become the most powerful moment in Dr. Phil's entire career. 3 hours earlier, Michael had walked onto that stage carrying 17 years of guilt, shame, and a question that haunted him every single day.
Does my brother still hate me?
The audience had gasped when they heard his story during the pre-show briefing. 2 brothers, inseparable as children, torn apart by a single moment of betrayal. A borrowed car. A terrible accident. A secret that destroyed a family. Michael sat in the green room, staring at his hands. They were shaking. His wife, Jennifer, squeezed his shoulder.
You're doing the right thing,
she whispered. But Michael wasn't sure. Coming on national television to confess what he'd done felt like the only option left. His therapist had suggested it 6 months ago, and after countless sleepless nights, he'd finally made the call to the producers. The backstory was simple but devastating. In 2007, Michael had borrowed his younger brother David's car without permission. He was 26, irresponsible, and desperate to impress a girl. He took the car for a joyride. At 2 a.m., he crashed it into a telephone pole. The car was totaled. But instead of calling his brother, instead of taking responsibility, Michael panicked. He reported the car stolen. David, who was 23 at the time, woke up to police at his door telling him his car had been found wrecked and abandoned. The insurance company denied the claim because of
suspicious circumstances.
David was left with $18,000 in debt, no car, and a criminal investigation hanging over his head. It took him 2 years to clear his name. By then, the damage was done. David had lost his job because he couldn't get to work. He'd lost his apartment. He'd spiraled into depression and moved 3 states away. Michael had watched it all happen. And he'd said nothing. The guilt had eaten at him for 17 years. His marriage had suffered. His health had declined. He tried to find David dozens of times, but David had changed his number, deleted his social media, and cut off all contact with the family. Their mother had died in 2019 without ever seeing her sons reconcile. At her funeral, David didn't show up. The family later learned he didn't even know she'd passed. Now Michael sat on Dr. Phil's stage, in front of millions, ready to confess everything.
I destroyed my brother's life,
Michael said, his voice breaking.
I let him take the blame for something I did. I watched him suffer, and I did nothing. I'm a coward.
Dr. Phil leaned forward, his expression serious.
Michael, you came here today because you want to make this right. But you need to understand something. Confession isn't redemption. Accountability is. Are you ready to be accountable?
Yes, Michael whispered.
I'd give anything to tell him I'm sorry.
Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a white envelope. He placed it carefully on the glass coffee table between them. The camera zoomed in on it instinctively. The envelope was sealed, unmarked.
Michael, Dr. Phil said slowly, what if I told you that your brother is here? What if I told you that he's been watching from backstage this entire time?
The color drained from Michael's face. His mouth opened but no sound came out. Jennifer, sitting in the front row of the audience, gasped and covered her mouth with both hands.
What?
Michael finally managed.
That's not. David is here? Right now?
Dr. Phil nodded.
Our team found him 6 weeks ago. It took a lot of convincing, but he agreed to come. He's been in the building for 2 hours. He heard every word you just said.
Subscribe and leave a comment. because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Michael stood up, then sat back down, then stood again. He looked toward the stage door, then back at Dr. Phil. Does he want to see me? That, Dr. Phil said, is entirely up to him. But before we do anything, I need you to understand something. This isn't a television moment, Michael. This is your life. Your brother's life. So I'm going to do something I've never done before. That's when Dr. Phil looked directly at the cameras. Stop the tape. Right now. Stop it. The confusion rippled through the crew. The director's voice crackled through the studio monitors. Dr. Phil, we're live to tape, we can't just... I don't care, Dr. Phil said firmly. Stop the cameras. Clear the crew from the stage. Give these men privacy. What happens next happens off camera. This isn't entertainment. This is two brothers who need a chance to heal. The audience sat in stunned silence as crew members began backing away from the stage. Cameras were powered down. The bright stage lights dimmed slightly. Michael stood frozen in place, trembling. Dr. Phil walked to the stage door himself. He opened it and spoke quietly to someone just out of view. Then he stepped back and gestured for them to enter. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. David walked onto the stage slowly. He was shorter than Michael, with darker hair and a beard. He wore jeans and a simple gray sweater. His eyes were red. He'd clearly been crying backstage. He stopped about 10 feet away from his brother. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. David, Michael finally said, his voice cracking completely. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. David didn't respond. He just stared at his brother, his jaw tight, his fists clenched at his sides. I know sorry isn't enough, Michael continued, tears pouring down his face. I know I destroyed your life. I know Mom died without seeing us together. I know I can't fix what I did. But I need you to know, I think about it every single day. I haven't had one day of peace since 17 years. Good, David said quietly. It was the first word he'd spoken. His voice was rougher than Michael remembered. You shouldn't have peace. Michael nodded, accepting it. You're right. I don't deserve it. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. David took a step forward. Then another. You know what the worst part was? He said. It wasn't the debt. It wasn't losing my job. It was thinking my own brother, the person I trusted most in the world, thought so little of me that he'd let me go through that alone. I know, Michael sobbed. I was a coward. I was scared and stupid and... Stop, David said, and Michael went silent. I'm not finished. David reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was worn, clearly handled many times. He held it up. This is a letter Mom wrote me, David said. I got it after she died. A lawyer sent it. She'd written it years before, put it in her will. You want to know what it said? Michael shook his head, not trusting himself to speak. She said she forgave you. She said she understood why you were scared. And she said she hoped that someday, I would find it in myself to forgive you too. Because we're brothers. And brothers are supposed to get a second chance. David's voice broke on the last word. He looked down at the letter, then back up at Michael. I've carried this letter for 4 years, David continued. And I've read it maybe 1,000 times. And every time, I'd think, no way. He doesn't deserve it. But then I'd remember us as kids. I'd remember you teaching me to ride a bike. I'd remember you standing up for me when I got bullied in middle school. I'd remember my brother, the real one, before everything went wrong. Dr. Phil paused near the stage door, completely still, letting the moment unfold naturally. When Dr. Phil's team found me, David said, my first instinct was to say no. To tell them to go to hell. But then I thought about Mom. And I thought about that letter. And I realized she was right. You're my brother.
You're the only brother I've got. Michael was shaking so hard he could barely stand. David, I'm not saying I forgive you. David interrupted. Not yet. I don't know if I ever fully will. But I'm saying I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can find a way back to being brothers again. Because holding on to this anger, it's been killing me too. The distance between them suddenly felt impossibly small and impossibly large at the same time. Either of them moved. Then Dr. Phil did something he rarely does. He walked back to the center of the stage and stood between them. Gentlemen, he said quietly, you've both suffered enough. You've both carried this weight long enough. Your mother is gone, but she left you both a gift, the gift of a second chance. The question is, are you brave enough to take it? Michael looked at Dr. Phil, then at David. I want to. More than anything. David nodded slowly. So do I. Then do it, Dr. Phil said simply. Take the first step. And that's when it happened. Michael took one step forward. Then David took one step forward. Then they both moved at the same time, closing the gap in seconds, and suddenly they were holding each other, really holding each other, for the first time in 17 years. The sound that came from both of them was raw and primal. It wasn't just crying. It was years of pain, guilt, anger, and loss pouring out all at once. They held onto each other like drowning men, and the studio audience, who had been silent this entire time, began to cry with them. Dr. Phil stepped back, giving them space. His own eyes were glistening. He'd seen thousands of emotional moments in his career, but this one was different. This was real reconciliation. Real forgiveness. Real family. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 2 minutes, the brothers pulled apart just enough to look at each other. I'm sorry, Michael said again, his voice hoarse. I'm so sorry. I know, David said. I know you are. They hugged again, tighter this time, and the audience finally couldn't contain itself anymore. People stood up, applauding through their tears. It wasn't the polite applause of a TV show. It was the kind of applause that says, we just witnessed something sacred. Dr. Phil let it happen. He didn't rush them. He didn't interrupt. He just stood there, hands clasped in front of him, watching two brothers find their way back to each other. Finally, he stepped forward and placed a hand on each of their shoulders. Michael. David. What you just did took more courage than most people will ever have to show in their entire lives. You chose healing over hatred. You chose family over pride. Your mother would be so proud of both of you. David wiped his eyes and looked at Dr. Phil. Thank you. For finding me. For making this happen. Don't thank me, Dr. Phil said. Thank your brother for having the guts to come here and tell the truth. And thank yourself for being brave enough to listen. He turned to the audience. Cameras back on, he said to the crew. I want everyone to see this. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The lights came back up fully. The cameras powered on. But the energy in the room had completely changed. This wasn't a TV show anymore. This was a testament to the power of accountability, forgiveness, and family. Dr. Phil picked up the white envelope from the coffee table, the one he'd placed there at the beginning. He handed it to David. Inside this, Dr. Phil said, is a letter from your mother. She wrote it specifically for this moment, if it ever came. She gave it to me years ago, when she first reached out to the show asking if we could help find you and bring you both together. She never gave up hope that you'd reconcile someday. David's hand shook as he opened the envelope. He pulled out a handwritten letter on cream-colored stationery. Michael moved closer so they could read it together. As they read, tears fell onto the paper. Michael's arm went around David's shoulders. David didn't pull away. When they finished, David carefully folded the letter and held it against his chest. She knew, he said quietly. She always knew we'd find our way back. Dr. Phil nodded. She did. And now, gentlemen, the real work begins. Reconciliation isn't a moment, it's a process. I'm going to connect you both with therapists who specialize in family trauma and reconciliation. You'll have resources, support, and guidance. But the most important thing you need is already here. You have each other. He looked directly into the camera. To everyone watching at home, I want you to understand something. What you just witnessed wasn't magic. It wasn't a TV trick. It was two men choosing to be vulnerable, to be accountable, and to fight for their relationship instead of giving up. If you have a broken relationship in your life, with a sibling, a parent, a child, a friend, take this as your sign. Don't wait 17 years. Don't wait until someone dies. Have the hard conversation now. Choose healing now. The audience erupted in applause again, and this time Michael and David turned to face them, still standing shoulder to shoulder. 6 months later, the brothers met for Thanksgiving, their first holiday together in 17 years. Dr. Phil kept a photo from that day in his office. It showed Michael and David reading their mother's letter together, tears on their faces, finally reunited. In 35 years of doing this work, Dr. Phil later said in an interview, "That moment reminded me why I do this. Real healing happens when people choose honesty over pride, and family over pain." A year after the episode, the producers received a package. Inside was a wedding photo. David had gotten married, and Michael stood beside him as his best man. On the back, David had written, "Thank you for giving me my brother back. It's never too late to come home." That's the legacy of that day. Not a TV moment, but proof that broken relationships can heal. That family is about choice, the choice to show up, to forgive, to fight for each other. Sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to say, "I'm sorry," and another brave enough to say, "Let's try again."